It was 6:30 a.m., December 23rd, 2009. The sun had barely risen over the quiet outskirts of Salisbury, Maryland, painting the frost-covered fields in a pale blue light. On an old farmhouse at the edge of town, an ordinary winter morning was about to turn into something unthinkable. Inside the house, Sarah's grandfather walked down the narrow hallway to check on the children. He paused at the last door, nudged it open, and immediately sensed something was wrong. The bed near the window was empty. Sarah's winter coat and shoes, still there, untouched. But her toothbrush was missing from the bathroom. The back door, which her aunt always locked at night, now hung wide open, letting in the biting cold. And the family dog, usually alert to any stranger, had been silent all night. Was this just a case of a child sneaking out? Or had someone familiar enough to silence the dog and move quietly through the house taken Sarah Foxwell right from her bed? As the house stirred with confusion and fear, one fact became chillingly clear. An 11-year-old girl had vanished without a trace. Her footprints were nowhere to be found, but outside in the snow, fresh tire tracks glistened in the morning light. Inside, the echoes of an ordinary night. Pizza for dinner, children's laughter, bedtime stories, now felt like memories from another world. Who could walk into this home, so trusted and safe, and steal away a child with such precision? If this was the work of a stranger, why had the dog not barked? But if it was someone the family knew, someone Sarah trusted, the questions only multiplied. At this hour, nobody knew just how deep this mystery would go, or how many lives it would alter forever. To understand the gravity of what happened that winter morning, we have to go back, step inside the life of Sarah Foxwell. Born May 18, 1998, Sarah was the second of several children, the quiet peacemaker in a bustling family. She had a way of smoothing out quarrels, of spreading laughter even when money was tight or tempers ran high. Teachers and neighbors described her as bright, optimistic, gentle, one of those children who seemed to glow from the inside out. December 2009 found Sarah living at her aunt's rural farmhouse. Her mother, working double shifts in town, was determined to save enough for Christmas presents. The arrangement was temporary, but the old house, surrounded by fields and woods, felt like a wonderland to Sarah and her siblings. They chased each other through long hallways, played hide-and-seek in the barn, and counted down the days to Christmas in a swirl of anticipation. It was a house full of routine and careful rules. Sarah's aunt checked the windows and doors every night, made sure nothing was left to chance. With their mother away, the children grew especially close to their aunt and grandparents. Even in a crowded house, Sarah never complained. If her younger sister wanted the last slice of pizza, Sarah gave it up with a smile. But behind this image of innocence and safety, danger was lurking far closer than anyone suspected. The family had no reason to think their precautions weren't enough. After all, who would want to harm a child so full of hope and kindness? Who could even imagine a shadow falling across a home so filled with laughter? Yet, as the winter grew colder and Christmas drew near, subtle warning signs began to surface, signs that would only make sense in hindsight when it was already too late. Every tragedy has its foreshadowing, those subtle, almost invisible cracks that only reveal their true meaning in the harsh light of hindsight. For the Foxwell family, the days leading up to December 23rd brought hints that, at the time, seemed minor. But in the context of what would soon unfold, each detail became a chilling clue. Sarah's aunt was meticulous about safety. It was a nightly ritual, checking every window, testing every lock, double-checking the back door. That routine brought peace of mind, especially with the responsibility of several children under one roof. But on the morning of December 23rd, something was wrong. The back door, usually bolted and secure, was wide open. The spare key that always hung nearby was gone. Had someone forgotten to lock up? Or did the answer point to something of far more sinister? A careful plan? An intruder who knew the family's habits? Then there was the missing toothbrush. In a house full of kids, things often went missing. But Sarah's green toothbrush, her favorite, was nowhere to be found. Why would a child, in the middle of the night, take her toothbrush but leave her coat and shoes? Was this a sign that someone intended to keep her alive, at least for a while longer? Or was it an attempt to mislead investigators, a red herring left behind by a calculating mind? Most disturbing of all was the dog's behavior. Normally quick to bark at any unfamiliar sound, the family dog had been silent throughout the night. Not a single growl, no restless pacing, just a quiet that now seemed unnatural. Could the dog have recognized the intruder? Was the person who entered the house someone familiar, someone trusted? With each passing hour, these oddities, once easily dismissed, began to form a pattern. It was a pattern that pointed, inexorably, to the terrifying possibility that the person who took Sarah was not a stranger lurking in the darkness, but someone close. Someone who knew the family's routines, the children's sleeping arrangements, and, perhaps most chillingly, how to slip in and out without raising the slightest alarm. December 22nd, 2009 seemed like any other night on the quiet Maryland farm. After dinner, pizza, the children's favorite, everyone settled into their routines. The house was filled with the sounds of laughter and anticipation for Christmas, now just days away. At 9:00 p.m., the children were tucked into bed. Sarah and her 6-year-old sister, Emma, shared a small bedroom at the back of the house, just steps from the rear door. But as the hours crept by, the familiar sense of safety began to fracture. Somewhere around midnight, Emma stirred in her sleep. Through heavy lids, she saw a figure in the room, a man whispering softly to Sarah. Fear rooted her to the mattress. Too terrified to move, she pretended to sleep, listening as the man led her sister from the room, footsteps muffled against the old wooden floor. Who was he? And why did Sarah go with him so willingly? Morning broke with a terrible clarity. Sarah's grandfather discovered the empty bed, the open back door, the spare key gone. Her winter coat and shoes sat untouched by the door, but out in the snow, a new set of tire tracks shone, crisp and unmistakable. They weren't there the day before. As the family scrambled to piece together what had happened, the details painted a portrait of meticulous planning. The intruder had bypassed every locked window and door, except the one with the missing key. He'd chosen a time when the house was most vulnerable, when fatigue had settled in and vigilance had waned. He'd moved so quietly, so deliberately, that only a half-awake child had witnessed the abduction, and she had been too frightened to cry out. By sunrise, the realization was unavoidable. This was not a random act. Someone had come prepared, waited for the perfect moment, and vanished into the darkness, leaving behind only a trail of questions and the hollow ache of a missing child. As dawn broke over Salisbury, on December 23rd, panic gave way to action. The family contacted the police, launching a search effort that would soon draw in an entire community. Every detail mattered now. The missing spare key, the open door, the silent dog. Investigators moved quickly to secure the home, combing for anything that might point to Sarah's whereabouts or the identity of her abductor. The first and most crucial lead came from 6-year-old Emma. in a trembling voice, and she told detectives about the man who had whispered to Sarah in the night. She remembered his face, his manner, and one detail that chilled investigators. She called him Mr. Tommy. That name was all too familiar. Thomas Leggs, 30 years old, was the ex-boyfriend of Sarah's aunt. He had a long history with law enforcement, a criminal record marked by repeated offenses against children, assault, unlawful entry, a pattern of predatory behavior. He was currently out on bail for breaking into a woman's bedroom not long before. Police brought Leggs in for questioning. He claimed to have been at a local bar until around 1:00 a.m., with witnesses able to confirm his presence, at least until that time. But between 1:00 and 7:00 a.m., his alibi evaporated. During those critical hours, Leggs exchanged text messages with multiple women, but each conversation ended with rejection. Nobody could account for his movements during the window when Sarah disappeared. Investigators widened their search. A forensic sweep of Leggs's pickup truck turned up a green toothbrush, Sarah's, wedged under a seat. Nearby, detectives found a large lollipop, something Sarah's family didn't recognize but could have been used as bait. The tire tracks outside the farmhouse matched those on Leggs's vehicle. Then came the breakthrough. Fibers from Sarah's pajamas and strands of her hair were discovered on the front seat, along with DNA evidence on the suspect's clothing that pointed directly to her. Still, questions lingered. Was this enough to build a case? Was there any chance Sarah might still be alive, hidden somewhere in the vast, frozen countryside? Or had the evidence already sealed her fate? As the investigation deepened, the case drew the attention and the hearts of an entire community. With the evidence from Leggs's vehicle mounting, detectives knew they needed to find Sarah, and fast. Every passing hour chipped away at hope, but also fueled determination. Technology would become the next linchpin. Investigators obtained data from nearby cell towers, mapping out Leggs's phone movements during the hours in question. The records painted a troubling picture. In the early hours of December 23rd, his phone pinged off towers near a heavily wooded area at the edge of town, close to the state border, roughly 8 miles from the Foxwell farmhouse. This discovery reshaped the search, drawing the focus to a cold, forbidding expanse of woods and wetlands where few dared venture in winter. The community responded in force. Nearly 3,000 volunteers assembled, combing fields, forests, and abandoned outbuildings in coordinated lines. Local authorities set up a command center in the town's baseball stadium to handle the sheer scale of the operation. Helicopters swept low over the trees, K-9 units scoured the underbrush, and searchers braved freezing streams and dense thickets in the desperate hope of finding a trace, a piece of clothing, a sign of struggle, any hint that Sarah had passed through. For investigators, every clue added a new layer of urgency. The tire marks outside the house, the cell phone data, the personal items in the truck, each element locked together, narrowing the possibilities. Still, as Christmas approached, hope began to flicker. The nights grew colder. The days stretched on without answers, and yet, the search itself became a symbol of a town's refusal to give up on one of its own, and of the lengths people will go when a child is missing. But as the investigation reached its peak, nobody could predict the shocking discovery that would finally break the case wide open and force everyone to confront a truth far darker than they had ever imagined. December 25th, just after 4:00 p.m., searchers fanned out along the tangled edge of the state line woods. It was Christmas Day, a time meant for joy and reunion. But for the community of Salisbury, hope had narrowed to a silent prayer. Then, beneath a stand of pines on the border, a volunteer made a heartbreaking discovery: the body of Sarah Foxwell. She was found near the tree line, her hands positioned upward in a way forensic experts later described as a reflex to extreme heat. The medical examiner's findings stunned even seasoned investigators. Sarah had suffered horrific violence. There were signs she had been assaulted. She had been strangled, but survived the initial attack. Autopsy revealed soil in her lungs, likely inhaled during a desperate struggle in a muddy hollow. The most haunting revelation: traces of smoke and fuel in her airways. Sarah had been alive when her attacker tried to burn her body, clinging to life even as flames licked the cold December air. This level of brutality sent shockwaves through the investigative team. Hardened detectives, accustomed to darkness, paused in disbelief. How could anyone inflict such suffering on a child, especially someone known to the family? Was there a moment when rescue had been possible? Some overlooked detail that might have saved her? Forensic evidence told a clear story. The same tire treads from Leggs's truck pressed into the soil beside Sarah's final resting place. Fibers, DNA, even the faintest whirl of Sarah's hair matched samples from Leggs's vehicle and clothing. The cell tower data, the items in the truck, the witness account, all threads wove into an unbreakable net. Yet even as the case against Thomas Leggs became airtight, the emotional cost weighed heavy. For the Foxwell family, the nightmare was no longer a question of hope, but of justice. And for the community, Sarah's loss would leave scars and questions that might never truly heal. In the cold weeks that followed Sarah's discovery, the search for justice moved from the forest to the courtroom. Prosecutors faced a daunting challenge. Their evidence was overwhelming: DNA, physical traces, and eyewitness testimony all pointed to Thomas Leggs. But one fact complicated the road ahead. For Sarah's 6-year-old sister Emma, testifying against her sister's killer in open court could cause wounds that would never heal. The prosecution weighed their options. The political climate made the death penalty a difficult path, and the cost of forcing a traumatized child to take the stand seemed too high. In the end, they struck a deal. If Leggs would plead guilty, he would face 2 consecutive life sentences with no chance of parole. There would be no appeals, no hope of freedom, no opportunity for him to slip through the cracks of the justice system again. In early 2011, Leggs accepted. He was transferred to a maximum security facility, forever removed from the outside world. Even behind bars, he would not find peace. Fellow inmates attacked him shortly after his arrival. But the community's focus was not on vengeance. Instead, attention turned to preventing another tragedy. Sarah's case spurred lawmakers into action. Sarah's Law was enacted in Maryland, mandating that anyone convicted of child abuse serve a minimum of 15 years before being eligible for parole, a direct response to the loopholes that once allowed Leggs to walk free and reoffend. The lessons for investigators were just as sobering. The smallest details, a missing toothbrush, a silent dog, a misplaced key, had been the threads that unraveled the truth. Technology and teamwork had closed the circle, but nothing could erase the loss or undo the trauma inflicted on Sarah's family. This case stands as a somber reminder. While communities can come together in extraordinary ways, the responsibility to fix broken systems, sex offender lists, bail decisions, warning signs ignored, rests on all of us. In the end, the legacy of Sarah Foxwell is not just a cautionary tale, but a call to vigilance, compassion, and change, so that no child's life is left unprotected, and no family faces the silence that fell over Salisbury that December morning. The case of Sarah Foxwell was more than a tragedy. It was a wake-up call for an entire community. What began as a seemingly ordinary December morning in Maryland quickly became a relentless search for answers, fueled by hope and heartbreak. Through meticulous investigation and the courage of witnesses, justice was finally served. But the scars left behind remind us that even in the safest places, vigilance is never optional. The lessons learned from Sarah's story live on, shaping laws and inspiring change, proof that even in darkness, a community can unite to bring light. If stories like Sarah's move you, don't let them fade into silence. Like and subscribe for more in-depth investigations into unsolved mysteries, the fight for justice, and the lessons these cases leave behind. Share this story to keep her memory alive, and to remind others that change begins with awareness.